Hello, good afternoon. Welcome to Communities Live here on Sheffield Live 93.2 FM. Chris Zanelli here, and we have film director and producer Evan Marlowe. Good afternoon.
Hi, how you doing? Good to see you.
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
Great. A little tired, but I'm doing all right.
So, for our listeners at home, give us a bit of background. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
About myself? Well, I started making movies when I was before high school. After I saw Star Wars, I was really inspired. So I got little Star Wars action figures and animated them with Super 8. And then I kind of graduated that out of that to live action and added sound. And then I put it on hold for a little bit to pursue my education. And then I met my wife, Carrie, who's from England and went to film school there. So she bought me a cheap camera, and together we started making movies again. We made two features, and then abruptio came along.
So you mentioned a film called Abruptio. I mean, how long was the process? Did it take a while for it to come together?
Yeah, it took a really long time because it's made with entirely with lifelike realistic puppets. So since that's not been done before, I had to kind of figure out how to do that with a lot of tinkering, trial and error over the course of 7 or 8 years to get it so that you would believe in the story and relate with these characters, even though they're static puppets. So it was a lot of problem solving along the way.
I mean, we'll talk a little bit more about Abruptio later on. But as for now, I mean, you mentioned Star Wars, but what else influenced you to become a film director?
Well, I'm heavily influenced. I don't think it shows in my style of filmmaking, but Spielberg's probably the greatest American filmmaker, just given the scope of what he does and the depth of it and the ability to create blockbusters and intimate portrayals. So, I mean, just his complete mastery has been inspiring to me. So, when I was a kid, movies like Poltergeist and E.T. and Raiders of the Lost Ark came out back to back, and it was just it propelled me into wanting to make films. But as far as horror, I'd say my mom took me to see Alien when it came out in the theaters,
Oh,
and I don't know why. I was just a little boy, and the person at the theater, I guess selling the concession, said they'd come and get us before the scary stuff started, but they never showed up. So it was me and my little friends hiding behind our seats in terror. So it was really a horrible experience, and I think it scarred me, but it also kind of like really inspired me to make horror films.
I've got to ask you. I mean, you mentioned a few films and a director that's influenced you. But if there's anybody that you could work with, new or old, who would it be and why?
Who would I work with?
Yeah, who?
I mean, like I said, Spielberg, they're just probably just to sit down and pick his brains and understand his thought process and making movies, because his fluency in cinema is just so thorough, and it seems so instinctive to him. It would just be interesting to kind of get in his head, to kind of understand how he, blocks scenes and frames and that sort of thing, and what his thought process is. So I mean, that's the obvious. If it's someone dead, it would probably be Hitchcock. I mean, he also was a complete master of suspense and manipulating the audience. One of my favorite living directors is Michael Haneke. It would be interesting to kind of figure out his thought process and how he does manipulate his audience. He does make them complicit in the terror of his films. I mean, I think he's one of probably the greatest living horror director, even though I'm sure he wouldn't call himself a horror filmmaker, and he's not really well known as a horror filmmaker, but his films are the most horrifying films that I think I've ever seen collectively.
So you mentioned a film earlier called Abruptio. So tell us, we aren't giving too much away. Can you tell us a bit about the plot?
Well, on the surface, it's about a guy that wakes up and he finds out from his friend that a bomb's been implanted in his neck, and he has to commit crimes or else the bomb will go off. And that's the starting point. And then I was kind of thinking about it. I hadn't written the script, and that kind of dawned on me that everyone's got a bomb in their neck. So I I remember waking my wife up. She was sleeping. I went, "Hey, everyone's got a bomb," and she just didn't care, and she went back to sleep. But it was like a light bulb that went on for me. It was like, oh, okay, so now it's like this intense race that everybody. It's just the world is completely devolving and going into chaos, and everyone's being forced by some unknown presence to do all these diabolical deeds.
And I mean, how difficult is it to, for our listeners at home who want to break into this industry for being a filmmaker and a producer. How difficult is it to break into this kind of industry?
Well, I'm in Los Angeles, and it's impossible to throw a stone without hitting a screenwriter or a filmmaker around here. So, and now with YouTube and the availability of cheap cameras that make really good images, and kids are pretty much born now knowing how to do After Effects, and it's very, very difficult. There's so much noise you have to rise above, and you have to do something distinct, which is partly why I made a film with life-size puppets, because no one had done that before. So I think you do need to create a niche, but you can't do it as a novelty because people will see that as a novelty. You need to do it, you need to have an idea that's motivated by the script. It has to have some depth to it. You have to put yourself into it. It has to be authentic, because people can smell when something's not authentic, and that'll just blow you out of the water too. So it depends really who you're catering to. You can make a really flashy sci-fi film. That's not hard to do these days and spend very little money and get the notice of the people that have got money and get you into a feature. It's a lot harder to make something that is smaller and intimate and personal and heartfelt, and then get recognized for that. So it's always been a tough industry, but there's no reason to give up. You just need to be creative.
And I mean, Abruptio, how can people get to see a copy of the film? Is it out in cinemas or digital platforms? How can people get to see it?
It's been playing worldwide since about January, and I think I've calculated in October it'll be playing on 4 continents in something like 19 cities. And in England it'll be at Grimfest. That's on October 8th. And there's another, at least one other film festivals happening in England. But that's going to kind of stop in around November, and then we're going to transition to distribution. It'll hopefully be theatrical and then video on demand, either at the end of this year or early next year.
And for anybody that wants to follow you on social media, do you have like the usual, like Instagram, Facebook?
Yeah, I think on Instagram I am ES_Marlowe, but that's hard to remember. So just go to Abruptio Film on Facebook. And I update that more routinely. All the updates will be on my Facebook, and then also abruptio.com has usually got most of the up-to-date information.
And my final question for you, Evan, is have you got anything you'd like to say to our listeners?
Well, I think if you're put off by puppets, then probably this isn't the movie for you. It's a very unsettling movie, even without the horror aspects. Just to see lifelike puppets, it's not a very easy watch for a lot of people. But if you can get past that, actually, there's I think it's a pretty interesting, fun movie.
Evan, it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Thanks for your time. Thank you. Bye.